Hey, welcome back to the Coach's Locker podcast. You're listening to episode 34. Today, again, I'm taking you through my book, Building Championship Caliber Football Programs. Kind of putting my book on tape, so to speak. But it's nothing you have to buy, something I'm going to do right here on my podcast. And today, we're talking about developing your philosophy, staying the course, developing your philosophy. Let me read you something Kevin Acee said. Kevin Acee gave me some good props on this book. He was the beat writer for the San Diego Chargers at the time, worked for the San Diego Union Tribune. Now he covers the San Diego Padres. Coach Fore took an ingenious idea and executed it well, just like you'd expect from a football coach. Taking people inside the locker rooms and the minds of the most successful high school coaches in the nation is fascinating. Relating the information from the viewpoint of a coach makes building championship caliber football programs informative and entertaining. I absolutely loved so many parts of this book, and I recommend it for every coach and aspiring coach. So again, today we're going to be talking about developing your philosophy, staying true to yourself, not moving all over the place, but finding out exactly who you are as a coach, developing that philosophy, then staying the course. Again, welcome to the Coach's Locker podcast with Coach Fore.
You are listening to the Coach's Locker podcast with Coach Fore, a place for all coaches to call home. The Coach's Locker podcast is a part of the Football Coaching Podcast Network. Please visit footballcoachingpodcast.com to hear and see our entire lineup of top football coaches coming to you every single podcast with valuable information to help you and your program. The Coach's Locker podcast with Coach Fore exists to help prepare coaches to be hired for the job of their dreams and to provide coaches with dynamite resources to become even more successful in their field. You can reach me on Twitter at Coach Fore, that's at COACHFORE, and my podcast home is at 8laces.org/podcast. That's 8laces, EIGHTLACES.org/podcast. Welcome to the Coach's Locker podcast with Coach Fore. Now, let's get after it. Hands up, forget about the past, 'cause you and I's everything I ever asked for. Top down round the West Coast.
So, Chapter 2, if you did not listen to Chapter 1 and how I wrote this book and all that stuff, go ahead, go back and listen to the last episode of this podcast. I believe it's episode 33, and you'll see exactly how I went about. I'm not going to cover that every week. You'll read about the how and why I developed and wrote this book, my very first book I wrote. I followed up with 2 more, but this is a great chapter in my opinion because, you know, one of the errors I made early on as a head coach, I spent 8 years as a head coach here in Southern California at the high school level, coached 16 years of high school and then 1 year of junior college, and then have since entered onto the dark side. I'm now an administrator. So I hung up the whistle after the 2017 season. But one of the errors I made early on as a head coach was just trying to be too many different people. And it took me, I'd say, probably 3 years to come into who Coach Fore was as a head coach and staying true to that mission. But let's talk today. Again, this is Chapter 2 of my book. It's called Staying the Course. Mark Baderas of Florence, Colorado High School said, "Stay the course. Don't change just to change. Have consistency and routine in the things you do." I love that. Now that we have figured out why you are coaching, that's from the last podcast. We talked a lot about why you are coaching. Let us talk about your philosophy of building a football program. What is your philosophy? What is your guiding light for building this program under your management? Your philosophy will be driven by your own mission statement and your own reasons for coaching, which we talked about last podcast. What is important is that you develop your philosophy and stick with it. That is a common theme that came back from the state champion coaches of which I interviewed. Again, I interviewed more than 100 state champions from like 40 states, all coaches who won state championships. I asked them each 3 questions. Again, I reviewed that last podcast. It can be summed up by don't change with the wind. Eric Kumba from St. Thomas Aquinas High School in New Hampshire. I would tell another coach to stay the course and stay true to your philosophy and the culture you are trying to create as a coach. Challenge your players on a daily basis and hold them accountable for their mistakes. Once they buy into what you are preaching, not only will they be successful football players, but they will be successful people as well. I love that quote by Coach Kumba. You need to make a lot of tough decisions about the direction of your program. What kind of offense, what kind of defense, what kind of special teams are you going to run? Are your special teams going to be an important part of your program or just something you do for 30 minutes a day before the game? Are you going to allow kids to miss your off-season program, just come out in August, or are you going to mandate they be there during the tough off-season program? Rhett Farmer from Piedmont Academy in Georgia said, the most important aspect of us winning championships is our commitment to consistency. We sell our kids that winning in football comes from sticking with your system and understanding Chuck Noll's quote, champions don't beat themselves. They just do the ordinary things better than their opponent day in and day out. I love that. Jeff Gorley from Olathe, Kansas South High School out in Kansas said, I would assume every coach wants to win a state championship, but they also need to understand there isn't a perfect system, a definite blueprint, or any other magic pill for a program to achieve success. Coaches should research all aspects of football, decide on their philosophical approach, and then implement a plan. Once a plan is deemed to be fundamentally solid, stick to it. Coaches that waffle will rarely achieve long-term success. In short, do what you believe and believe what you do. It is fine to tweak systems to fit personnel, but stay within the parameters of your basic philosophy. Great advice. Coaches who have found success in the win-loss column have developed their plan and stuck with it, no matter what anyone else had to say about that plan. The reason that staying the course is so important is because it sets the precedent for the expectations in your program. Everyone knows what to expect from the coach in the football program. There are no surprises. This approach helps your program run like a well-oiled machine. Consistency is the key to the success of any type of business. High school football is no different. Jeff Van Leeuwer from Bridgewater Emory Ethan High School in South Dakota said, continuity. We run the same offense year after year and all through 7th through 12th grade. I believe by the time our players become varsity players, they know our system well. John Schwartz from Minden High School in Michigan said, we do the same thing year after year and don't change much. Our 5th and 6th graders run the same drills and use the same terminology as our kids. Our JV practice with our varsity and learn from our older kids. Our summer program keeps our kids together and is a big part of our team unity. Your program's mission statement. Developing your program's mission statement and or goals is important because it will serve as a roadmap for your success. It lets everyone know in your community know what your program is all about. When I first took over as the head football coach, it was at Linfield School in Temecula, California. Our coaching staff was at a clinic in February when our current head coach told us he would not be returning. It was a real shock to us all. He spoke with me one-on-one after that meeting and told me I should apply for the job, that he was going to recommend me. I went right to my hotel room and wrote out my mission statement on a napkin. I've used this for 8 years as a head coach. And here's what my statement was. Lions football will be known for their ACTS, A-C-T-S, achievement in the classroom by each student athlete. C stands for coaches who teach not only about football, but life. T, their sportsmanship in both victory and defeat. And then S, success based not on talent or ability, but a non-negotiable work ethic. So again, that's something I went and wrote on a hotel napkin the very night that our head coach said, I want you to take this program over for me. And I just sat in my bed for a long time. I was excited about that possibility. And then I just thought, what's my mission statement? What is my program going to look like? And that's when I wrote that out, and I loved it. And that became my 4 points of emphasis as a head coach. As the head coach, these have been the 4 pillars of my football program for my entire career. I will not hire a coach who does not match the short description of what I want my coaches to do. I will not tolerate unsportsmanlike behavior. I will constantly make it a point to let my student athletes know their grades are more important than their route running, and we will always have a very strong work ethic. These guiding principles have served me well over my years as a head coach. One that I found from Greenville College in Illinois was something I really liked. If players remain at Greenville College for 4 years, we will give them a great education, great personal attention, a great family climate. Additionally, if players graduate from Greenville College while participating in our football program, they will have learned how to be responsible, not make excuses, not complain. This is who we are and who we want to become. Again, that was from Greenville College, probably a decade ago. But that was another mission statement I always liked. I encourage you to write a mission statement for your program at the end of this chapter or this podcast. This will help you stay the course for the long haul. It will serve as the foundation for your success, your blueprint for the future. Without a strong plan in place, you will waver with the wind. Championship coaches have a strong plan, and they don't waver from that plan. That's one thing I learned from this research. Brent Hill at St. George's High School in Tennessee said, "We at St. George's tried to focus on each week. Externally to the team and internally as a staff, we made sure that our week-to-week approach fit our seasonal goal. Our core values for the season were discussed instead of winning. The core values were truth, respect, loyalty, commitment, and desire. The core values served as the basis for our program. Each day we talked about our core values. And each Thursday after our walkthrough practice, we had a different coach talk about a different topic that was related to our core values. Other than that, we focused on winning daily against ourselves rather than beating our opponent." Love that quote. It takes time. It's not that we did something different this year as opposed to other years. It was more about the fact that it takes years to establish a program. We invest more time than other programs in the mental and spiritual components of football. That quote is from Willie Amendola from Decaney High School in Texas. Again, all these quotes that you're going to hear me speak about today in this podcast, every one of these quotes comes from head coaches who won a state championship the year that I wrote this book. Well, from the season of 2011. I wrote the book in 12. But I think you'll agree, although the book came out 7 years ago, actually, it came out in 13. It took a lot. It's a painstaking process to write a book, but if it's done right, that is. All of these guys won state championships in 2011 and responded to a survey that I did asking each of them 3 questions. Greg Macaron from Glassboro, New Jersey High School says, "It's a long process that takes a minimum of 4 years to accomplish." Scott Sparks from Denton High School in Montana, "Success never comes easy. There has to be commitment on your end as a coach to outwork the other coaches in your league and to constantly improve as a coach through clinics, film study, reading, and visiting with your peers. There also has to be a commitment and leadership from your players. They have to want to be successful and be committed to getting up early in the summer to lift and be willing to sacrifice parts of their personal life for the benefit of the team. I think coaches also must encourage their kids to be athletes and not just football players, and be flexible in that you need to coach to your personnel, but keep continuity in your system so that you can adjust on the fly." Great stuff there. Chuck Reedy from Goose Creek High School in South Carolina. "The year before I took the job, the team was 0-11. We were so bad that our goal was just to improve every day. Over the years, we have never deviated from that and preached that if every player will get a little better every day, whether it be during practice or off-season, get a little better today and multiply that by 75 players, then we have made progress as a team. Using this approach, we have improved every year, culminating with a 27-2 record the last 2 years and a state championship this season." From Tim McMullen, Letchworth High School in New York. "This year in particular, we did not change anything. This year's state title comes from years of commitment in the off-season, focusing on goals set before. A core of players, along with the staff, buying into a belief system and constantly committing their time to the weight room and each other. This commitment and belief lead to higher performance levels on the field, and more importantly, a confidence and togetherness that were unmatched throughout the season. By the time the state tournament came around, there were no egos on the field. Our sole intention was to work as hard as we could collectively on every down, just as we had done for years in the weight room on every rep. Believe in your schemes. Stay the course. Believe in what you do and how to do it. That's from Hal Lamb out in Georgia. He was at Calhoun High School at the time. Hal Lamb's a tremendous coach. Travis Cody, Bishop Guertin High School, New Hampshire. Stay true to what you believe in. Don't think you need to run the schemes that other teams do because they have success with it. Work hard at what you do and be good at it. Lenny Schroeder, Canastota, South Dakota High School. That's Canastota High School in South Dakota. Coach what you know. Don't go with the latest fad and be disappointed when you don't know how to coach it. If you need help, go get it. I have spent most of my coaching career in what is called the CIF Southern Section. California is broken into 10 sections governed by the California Interscholastic Federation. The Southern Section has 13 divisions of 11-man football and 2 divisions of 8-man football. Because I've been at 2 small private Christian schools, I've been in the lowest of the divisions 11 through 13. These smaller schools are made up of teams with sometimes as few as 15 kids, maybe to 30 kids on their varsity teams. Now that's when I was a head coach. I've coached at much larger schools as an assistant, as a varsity special teams coordinator over the coach of the last 4 or 5 years. But most teams that I played against and was a head coach of were in that mid-20s to low 30s range. When you have this few of kids, it's tough to find that stud quarterback year in and year out. Therefore, I chose to run the wing T offense. I've done pretty well with that wing T offense. As an example, in 2005, Capistrano Valley Christian went 0-9. They had a great person playing quarterback and probably their best option for what they were trying to do, a kid named Nate. Well, for a variety of reasons, Nate threw 25 interceptions his junior year. I became the head coach there in 2006. I installed the wing T. Nate became one of the wings, and we made a kid named Andre the quarterback. He had been a running back the previous year. The kids all kind of laughed when I told them he was going to be moved to quarterback. They had run a version of the spread offense in their winless 2005 season. He was by no means a spread quarterback, but he was the best wing T quarterback I ever had. The kid did a great job for us. Our team went 5-5 that year. From 0-9, and then they were 2-8 in 2004. So they were 2-18 to 5-5. And we lost 2 games. 2 of those 5 losses we lost on the last play of the game. One with our defense on the field, one with our offense on the field. So we were 2 plays away from going from 0-10 to 7-3. That was quite an accomplishment, and I give a lot of credit to the scheme. We just did not have the kids to run the spread offense, but we did have the kids to run the wing T. Many coaches in the division tried to run the spread when it was getting very popular. They were throwing their own offense right out the window in order to run something they thought was cool. It's kind of ridiculous to see teams who do not have a quarterback try to run the spread offense or the West Coast offense, trying to do those things. But to many people, the wing T, the double wing, it isn't sexy. Now, again, I wrote this book in 2012. It's kind of coming around again now in 2019, which is cool to see. Well, maybe the last 2 years. But who cares? Find something that will work for your kids and run it. Terry Ward from Tanaha High School in Texas. Scheme-wise, we developed an offense that fit our kids and did not worry about what the trends were. Defensively, we preached tackling and turnover, which we did both every week all the way through the state game, even during our bye weeks. John Ivelo from Bolingbrook High School in Illinois. We have done nothing differently. We have been knocking on the door forever, it seems like. We stuck to our beliefs, the biggest one being a platoon system. 45 of our 65 kids played in the state championship game. By doing this, we have developed more kids that are able to contribute. Individual improvement is the name of the game. We get better as the season goes on. Ed Sadlock from Cedar Grove High School, New Jersey. I don't think, nor do I want to speak about what other coaches do or do not do in their programs. At Cedar Grove, we have a philosophy about everything. Offense, defense, special teams, practice, staff meetings, off-season for players. These philosophies do not really change over the years. They might be adjusted, but if we find a better way of doing things, but for the most part, they are the foundation of our program. Hopefully, our team gets better each day, and by the time we get to the state playoffs, we are hitting on all cylinders. This season, we started off real strong, winning 6 straight games, and then lost 2 games in a row before we won our last 4. Injuries played a factor in those losses, as did the fact that both teams we lost to were playoff teams in a larger group. I would like to believe at Cedar Grove we coach our players up and stay consistent with the philosophy we have developed over the years. Carl Lemke from St. Croix Lutheran High School in Minnesota. Get a system you like and stick with it. Work hard to improve the details of that system. Do not jump around adding aspects to a system that may look good to start with. Consistency in a system for grades 9 through 12 is vital. Your fingerprint. Your program needs to have your fingerprint on it. You need to take ownership of it and make it yours. You can't stay the course with someone else's program. If you have recently taken over a program, or if you do in the future, make sure you make the program yours. Changing the culture to fit what you are trying to do is critical. Again, I refer to 2006 season when I started at Capistrano Valley Christian. Lifting weights was a small part of their fabric before I got there, a very small part. However, some of the kids did not lift with the team. Some of the stars on the team saw their own personal trainer on their own time. This was in South Orange County, where many baseball kids have a pitching coach, a running coach, a fielding coach, a bunting coach, etc. When these 2 certain kids kept missing practice, I would ask why they were not coming to our weightlifting sessions. They said, "Coach, we have our own guy. We go see. We don't lift weights with the team because it will hurt us for baseball." I had a choice to make right then and there. Accept these kids missing my weight room time, or mandate they lift with the team. The culture had to be changed. Again, these guys won, I think, 2 games in 2 years. They needed to work out with the team. Sure enough, they were in the weight room with us. It took me sitting them down, and in one case sitting down with one of their parents to explain my philosophy and why it was very important they were lifting weights with us. I'm going to come back to this story in a second. Again, from Eric Kumba, St. Thomas Aquinas High School in New Hampshire. This year, in my first year as a head coach, we remade the culture of the program. We implemented a whole new system and created a tempo that the kids have never experienced before. Week after week, we stressed the importance of what we were doing and continued to challenge our young men and raise the level of expectation. As a result, we brought the program to a level that not only our kids but our opponents had never seen, and it was evident on a week-to-week basis. Jeff Craddock from Tarboro High School in North Carolina. My main piece of advice would be, you win with good people. Surround yourself with players and coaches you can trust and who have the same vision as you do in regard to becoming state champions. Once you have that in place, maintain a consistent level of discipline. Players need to know the level of expectations. In the beginning, you will lose players who you think will help you win because they may be good athletes, but they do not understand what it really takes to be the best. In the long run, you will get the athlete who has a great attitude and understands expectations, and your program will be built to win for the long haul. Great stuff there from North Carolina. Again, I want to go back to the story about these 2 baseball players I had, okay? I told them, and these were 2 of my best athletes. In fact, one of them was a 3-sport athlete, football, baseball, basketball, and he was an all-league kid in 2 of those. So one of the best athletes in the school. The other one was a 2-sport athlete his senior year, 3-sport athlete his junior year. One of the best athletes I've ever coached. And I had to sit down and tell these kids, if you're not going to live, and remember, this is in my first couple weeks at the school. I was just hired, brand new coach. But the whole culture had to be changed, and we did it. Again, they went from 0-10 to 5-5 in 1 year. We were the only school in California. Now, there were 50 schools in California that were 0-10 in 2005, the year before I got there. Only 1 school went 500 or better, and that was us. So 1 out of 50, changed it course that much. That's a really, really difficult thing to do. I'm telling you, I mean, it was fun. It was a lot of fun, a lot of work, as you can imagine. But we won that first game, boy. It was like we won a Super Bowl. I mean, the parents, the community, it was crazy. And then I'll never, ever forget coming out of the locker room. I mean, all the parents and fans stayed outside of our locker room for like, I was the last one out after, all the kids went out, coaches went out. I was kind of enjoying it by myself, taking a few minutes of deep breath. But I was the last one out of there, made sure everything was clean. And it was probably 30 minutes between when the first kid left and when the last person I left. And they were still out there. And the round of applause and the pats on the back, it was an amazing event. Again, I felt like we won this championship. I'm coming off a program that had been in the semifinals twice in the last 3 years. And, we just expected. We won like 10, 11, 12 games a year type of deal. And so I'm like, yeah, this Tri-City, we should have beat them. I've never lost to them. I mean, why would we lose to this school, But the year before, they lost them by like 30 points. So I'm just like, I was thrilled. It was really, really neat experience coming out of that locker room. And then we won a second game that year. And I'm like, holy smokes, now these kids, some of those kids who played just their junior year or, maybe they came out and played their sophomore year, they'd never won a high school football game, and now we won 2. So we were 2-0. Cool story from that. I'm deviating from the chapter. The chapter's over. I'm deviating from the chapter here a little bit to prove a couple points. But after we go 2-0, this guy comes up to me, this little Asian man. I had never met him before. But he says, Mr. Fore, you've done an amazing job here. And he says, in this real thick Asian accent, my son never win one football game. In 1 year, he never win one game. And now in 2 game, you win 2 game. And it was real. I'll never forget that conversation. He was so happy. I met him, met his wife. They're Ben's parents. I won't give the last name, but he says to me, what can we do to support your program? I want to give you some money. I had no idea who this guy was, right? So he says, put together a list of what you want for me and get it to me on Monday. So I don't know. I mean, is this guy going to buy me a couple footballs or give us $10,000? I don't know. So I put together a list of things we needed in our program that equaled $10,000, but they were all itemized, line item itemized. For instance, one of them was just coaching jackets for the coaching staff. One of them was a Landro Play Analyzer, if you remember that, back in the day, man. This is before Huddle. But that was like a $4,000 system. One of them was 20 footballs. I think they had 4 footballs when I got there, and I'm used to having, 15, 20 footballs. So anyway, total's $10,000. I email it to him. He responds in a few minutes. He says, is this all you can think of? And then I'm like, dang, maybe I should put more on there. But I didn't want to look greedy. I said, yeah, that's it. So he said, I'll have a check over to the school in the next hour for you. And then, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 hours later during the day, my secretary calls from the front desk. She's like, hey, I forgot to tell you, you got this envelope dropped off for you, from a parent. It's up here at the desk. So I go up there. I'm all anxious. $10,000 check, dude. $10,000 check to our school for the football program. He bought everything on that list. Long story short is, if you're from Southern California, I don't know if these restaurants are other places, but he started and owned the Pickup Sticks franchise, which is it's a great, like really healthy franchise for different Asian food. And so anyway, I had no idea who he was. I learned a good lesson from that. Ask the principal, hey, so-and-so wants to donate some money. How much does he have? Because I think if I would have written a request for $20,000, he probably would have written me a check for that. But anyway, it was amazing. But part of that whole culture we had to develop to change there was getting kids in the weight room. Again, when I first took over, only about half the kids showed up for the weights. And the other half had all their personal trainers and whatever. And obviously that wasn't working. They weren't very good. So I told these 2 kids, if you don't lift weights, you're not going to play. Again, 2 of the best kids in the school. One of them, mom worked at our school as a principal secretary. One of them, the other kid, both parents ran the booster club. So these were, and again, 2 of the best athletes in the school. But you talk about this chapter 2 here, this chapter 2 about developing your philosophy and sticking to it. That's what my philosophy was. Your butts are in the weight room. And if you're not going to play. It's very simple. Another time I did that, second Division I kid I ever coached, first Division I kid I ever had as a head coach. And same thing. He didn't want to come to our summer program. And our philosophy was, if you're in town, you come to our summer program. My philosophy working with kids has always been, if you're on vacation with your family, your grandma or something, go. That's not going to hurt you. But if you're in town, you need to be here. And my player committee set a attendance rate. If you weren't at 80% of our practices that summer, you weren't going to play. Well, this kid he came to 4 of our 28 practices. And he shows up on the first day of training camp, and he was a kicker and a wide receiver. Big, good-looking 6'3" kid, and again, he got a full ride scholarship, University of Hawaii. But he comes out and he's like, "Hey, I heard you guys needed a kicker." I said, "No, we're good. This is the first day of training camp." And he laughed. He's like, "What do you mean you're good for?" I said, "You're not playing this year, dude." This was his junior year. He said, "What?" I said, "You're not playing. You made a decision not to work out all summer. You're not playing. You can try again next year. You have a great year. A great junior season." And he was stunned. I had to meet with his dad and the athletic director after practice later that morning. But we stuck to our guns. I had the support of my athletic director, and the kid didn't play. Came back his senior year, missed one day that next summer, earned a full ride scholarship. So anyway, 2 brief stories of my own experience as a head coach. You've got to just set a parameter. I'm a real big stickler on that. When it's part of your philosophy, you got to stick to it. Hey, thanks for joining me here on Coach's Locker Podcast. I hope you learned a little something from these coaches all over the nation, won state championships on developing your philosophy and staying the course. To finish off this, I've got some questions for you on staying the course. Again, we're going to do this. I wrote these in my book, and you'll see after every chapter, I got something called the timeout. This is a time for you to listen to a question, pause the podcast, write down your answers. This will help you. 5 questions for today's timeout. Are you staying the course with your program? Or is the program you're in staying the course if you're not a head coach? Are you shifting with the wind and the times? If you are staying with the course, in what ways are you doing so? You can pause this now and write your answer if you'd like. Question number 2. What is your program's mission statement? I summarized my mission statement earlier with the acronym ACTS, A-C-T-S. How do you summarize your philosophy? Press pause again. Answer this if you'd like to. Number 3, do you feel as though your administration supports your mission statement? If not, what are the roadblocks to making that happen? How can you get your administration on the same page as your philosophy? Question number 4, what is one example from this past season of how you stuck by your philosophy when push came to shove? Question number 5, what do you think the players in your program would say is your fingerprint on the program? Ask some of them. Write your response down. What is your fingerprint? Well, that's all for this episode of Coaching Locker Podcast as we're going through my book, Building Championship Caliber Football Programs. Next chapter, Chapter 3, will be about coaching the heart of the athlete with some great feedback. If you're interested in purchasing this book, I've got it for sale at 8laces.org. Again, EIGHTLACES.org. But we will be going through it. My next, we've done 2 chapters, so the next 8 podcasts will be 1 chapter from this book each week. I hope you're enjoying it. Hope it makes you and your program more successful. You can find my Coach's Locker podcast home at 8laces, EIGHTLACES.org/podcast. Find me on Twitter at Coach Fore. That's at COACHFORE. My email, Chris, CHRS, at 8laces, EIGHTLACES.org. Until next time,